Hey, fellow tennis nerds. I hope all is well. Back to another podcast episode, this time with a guy who's been on the channel before, but then testing rackets. It was Strikes, it was Blade version 9. Today we're going to talk a lot about gear because that's his expertise as well. Rackets and runners, Luca here, and also a hitting partner of Beckett who's been on the podcast before. So that's pretty cool. So how are you today, Luca?
I'm good. I was actually just hitting with Beckett before this. Bit of an injury to my knee, but in general, feeling good. Summer's almost here. It's beautiful outside in Vancouver, so happy in general.
Do you find easy hitting partners there? Like, I mean, he told me that was a problem a little bit to find court times. I mean, you have free courts, but then to find like good hitting partners where you are.
So during the summer, it's usually fine, like for court time especially, because we're basically a desert during the summer and it rains every day during the winter. So during the summer, it's fine. There's like light out till 10:30 p.m. so you can play no problem. And we have quite an active community. So I don't know. I've never had an issue finding partners. I got really lucky during the pandemic. I actually bought a Pro Tour 280 off a guy that ended up becoming my partner for like the next 4 years. And we're still hitting together like to this day. So I guess it kind of worked out for me in that sense, where my gear nerdedness ended up getting me some partners and stuff. So it was cool. And like Beckett, similar thing. But it's not too bad. This is actually a really good place to play in the summer. I think it's one of the best places. It's during the winter that's really, really tough because of court time, but I'm pretty lucky. The school here gets me courts basically whenever I need them. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Here there are courts, of course. They're expensive courts, but at least you find courts, which is good. And you've been here to play as well.
Yeah, well, you and I played on clay, which was the first time I'd played on clay since I was like 8, which was really fun. I know some people commented on my video. They were like, Luca's like Bambi on ice on clay, which is true. I was moving terribly. My footwork was so bad, but it's fun. Like you can slide, obviously, which I like to do on hard courts, but on clay it's just way safer and way more fun. So,
yeah. No, it's a good surface, but you need time to get used to it. It's crazy. So your journey with rackets and runners, like it's been going pretty well, and you're doing excellent reviews, like top reviewer for sure. Doing a little bit of everything.
Thank
you
you.
Talked about running shoes before we went on, but rackets I think is maybe the one that reads or gets the most views, and then you also do some pickleball, right? Is that the story?
Yeah, a lot of pickleball. I do as much pickleball as I do tennis, but obviously the channel isn't quite as popular yet. I don't know if it will become one day. My passion is definitely tennis, and I think you can kind of tell that from the videos. Like I'm as professional in the pickleball ones as I am the tennis ones, but I think I have a bit more of my personality and the fun vibe for the tennis stuff. But yeah, I mean, I really like pickleball. I know it's a little contentious to talk about on a tennis channel and stuff because there is like a war going on between the two sports, but I'm of the opinion that anything that gets people outside in general is going to be a good thing for society. I think pickleballers need to maybe stop trying to get concessions from tennis players quite as much. I think that's where the problems are gonna happen. But I mean, I'm happy to do both and try to spread the athletic community as much as possible.
Yeah, I'm the same. I don't mind playing pickleball. I prefer tennis, to be fair, but I don't mind it. Like if someone says, "Hey, you want to play pickleball?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure," or paddle, whatever. I'll play something. It's quite fun.
I mean,
so I don't think
court sport
pretty.
Any court sport where you're making contact with a ball with something in your hand is so much fun. Like these are the most addicting sports on the planet, I think. So any of them are awesome. Even when I go, like there's a bar in Vancouver that's like a table tennis bar, and we'll go and play. I'll play for like 2 hours with my friends. If drunk or not, I'm just like, okay, this is fun. I love the sport.
Yeah, it's cool that they have a table tennis bar. I think that's awesome. That's really, it's a fun sport as well. Like I agree, I'm a racket sport guy, like paddle, racket, whatever you want to call it. It's been my jam for a long time, right? But if we get into rackets, like, so you've been a racket nerd for quite a long time. You're pretty knowledgeable about rackets. You can say that again. And how did it start for you? Like, where did it start?
So I'd always been kind of a gear nerd growing up. Like started with soccer. So I was a big soccer player for most of my life, really. And actually, like, as soon as I found out YouTube existed when I was like 13 or whatever, I started following this guy called Soccer Reviews for You on YouTube, and he was like very knowledgeable, very nerdy, and like that he became basically my religion for like soccer gear. So that was where my like gear addiction started. And then basically anything I did, I would be like super into the techie side of gear. Like I remember when I bought my first ski jacket, it was like a 2-month process. It was the biggest purchase I'd ever made in my life back then. And I was like, okay, I need the Gore-Tex Pro, like the best shell I can get for the best price or whatever. And then I started playing tennis again when I was 19 because I was living close to courts on my like university house. And actually, like basically, you were the reason why I started becoming like really into gear again, because I think you'd started your channel maybe like a year or so before that. And this was when you were making like a bunch of videos on like IG Radical Pros and like that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, this is the coolest stuff ever. Like gear, like I realized the extent of gear in tennis was like quite vast. Probably one of the coolest industries for that in any sport. And so I was like watching you pretty religiously. I basically during the pandemic, like once courts reopened in Vancouver, I went on a rampage of buying every used racket that I could find, like every cool used racket that I could find. And basically, like that's how I got the breadth of my knowledge, I guess you could say, was just like testing a bunch of stuff. And then eventually I was like, okay, I got to string all these rackets. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Rackets and I'm trying to get a job at Rackets and Runners. So I got a job there. I was actually a shoe fitter for like the first 6 months. And then I came back, started stringing, and the pandemic hit, and I just was stringing like crazy, playing tennis with my buddies there. We had a really fun group. We were all tennis players and all like playing pretty much every day. And then I was like, okay, I should probably quit this job because I have a degree and I need to use that degree. And then my boss was like, well, why don't you maybe use your brain and write reviews for us and do this kind of stuff. And so it started off kind of slow. I was doing like one review every month for the newsletter. And then I like fully quit and I went to Europe, and she was like, no, we're going to keep you doing these reviews because we like this. And so I was like I did like 4 months visiting my family and friends in France. And I was like basically writing reviews whenever I needed a bit of money to fund whatever I was doing in Europe. And then I came back and I was like, okay, if you give me the keys to this YouTube channel, I think I can do something with it. And I remember we got the Pro Staff X early, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to test this, and we're going to try to get this review out as soon as possible so that, if people want to review the Pro Staff X, they have to watch me even if I'm terrible. And it worked out pretty well. Like I got like 1,500 views overnight or something. And back then that was like crazy for me. And yeah, kind of took off from there. Watching that review is hilarious. It's so bad compared to now, but yeah.
Well, that's the part of YouTube, right? Like, or anything you learn, so you start like, I dare not go back to my old videos, even from a year back. I go like, no, I can't watch this. I know. I'm not gonna watch that.
I know.
It's funny when you get comments from like really old videos, you're like, oh no, don't watch, please. I should maybe unpublish. But then if they get some value from it, I will leave it there and cringe, it's just how it is, right?
No, exactly. Like whenever I get comments on like, I think there's one video that's still doing pretty well for me. It's like the top 5 control rackets. And that was like one of the shifts in my like ability to talk in front of a camera was like one of the big ones. So it's already pretty good, but I go back and I'm like, oh my God, you sound so boring. Like, how are people actually enjoying this content? But I guess it's pretty funny. Your old videos, I love your old videos. Like, and like the Tennis Warehouse ones, like the DR98 review, I've watched so many times because like Andy was so hyped on that racket, and I don't know, the vibe was just good. Like YouTube's funny. Like I feel like it's the vibe you get from the video that makes it either go viral and make people like really entertained. So yeah, it's a fun little game to play for sure.
Yeah, I think so. I think sometimes we exaggerate in our heads, I guess, people in general, but also content creators, like how well produced it needs to be, how amazing it needs to sound and look. Sound I think is maybe the most important, that it sounds decent, right? But then people just get, the engagement from like how down to earth the person talking is, or if they feel like a relatability, or if there's some like fun stuff to the content that's not so obvious, it resonates on some level. I think you can be quite successful. So, it's a thing where it's hard to, you can try to go the Mr. Beast route by like doing all the data and trying to optimize for all the data, and that seems to work for him. But I think it's a little bit more fun to do it in a personalized approach and try to see if people find the enjoyment in that, and then tweak, of course, as you go along.
Yeah, totally. Like I like my like and I appreciate suggestions I get from people, and obviously, but my friends will suggest me something that's like maybe going viral on TikTok, or like X, Y, and Z will get you more views, and I'm like, I don't think that's like the process I want to follow. I like what's working right now for me is working for me. You know, overloading people with information is kind of my thing right now. Like it's just way too much, I think, sometimes, but people seem to like it. And then, you know, little like quirky little funny things in here, like my relationship with the Gravity Pro, for example, has been something that, I don't know, gets people coming back because it's just funny. Like people will be in my comments saying like Gravity Pro mentioned in this video, let's go. So yeah, it's just little things like that that keep like people coming back to the individual more than like the content, I guess, is what is the big thing, I think.
Yeah, I think that's important. And the way of you narrating the style, and if you give a lot of information, a lot of people in this space especially like the information. They come from the information. They want your take because you're a seasoned reviewer.
Yeah.
Probably the same with me in that sense. Like, what's your take on this racket? Should I even look into that? Yeah. Is it fun? You know, they maybe want to watch some like highlights or see something, how the ball moves and so on, you know. And the last few ones you did one interesting where you talk about the 5 best rackets for the one-handed backhand. And as far as I know, you're not a one-handed backhand player. And how was that video to do? And then what I like is that you really like you start by showing like you're trying to work on the one-hander, you know. And it's one of the most difficult shots. Even if I have a one-handed backhand, I sometimes don't have it. You know what I mean? So it was interesting.
You've got a great one-hander. Mine was good enough for the video, let's put it that way, but I don't think I'll be switching to a one. Like I was trying it this morning when I was playing with Beckett. It's like, no, there's no consistency here. Not that my two-hander is very good either, but it was funny because I actually think it was pretty good to try to make a video like that when I don't have a one-hander, because you'll like instantly feel if a racket works for it or doesn't. Like, okay, while still being analytical about it, because like I'm not trying to be like, what my experience, like what's not like, I need to analyze things like patterns that I felt with the rackets that actually made them good for one-hander, not necessarily just because they worked for me, because like I'm not, you know, the god of knowledge in this sphere because I don't have a one-hander. So it was like, okay, yeah, this stability was super important on every racket. Like I tried the E-Zone, for example, which I think would actually be a pretty good one-handed backhand racket, but mine was like way too low. It was like 312 swing weight, and like doesn't have the static weight to back it up without weight in the handle. So I was like, I think this this racket has potential, but no, it's not like as good as X, Y, and Z that I said in that video. So it was just like kind of recognizing patterns, and then after that, because like there's a bunch of 310, 315 gram whippy feeling players rackets, but then like I was like, okay, now you need something a little bit more outstanding to push you over the edge. So like the CX200 Tour was good, but there was nothing outstanding, which is why it kind of came in number 5. I mean, it was very good actually, because the feel is great and the stability is high considering the fairly low swing weight. But like then I was like, okay, something like the Percept is just, it's more user friendly, it's more spin friendly. This is a better overall racket, I think, for the stroke. So it was definitely a fun process. I think my hitting partners were getting a little frustrated, and that's why we see a lot more footage of me drilling, because I don't have a great one-handed backhand, but it got better over that play test.
Yeah, it's an interesting approach to go from like, I mean, you're a good tennis player, but then taking it to a strokes that you don't use normally and seeing what the limitations are. And I agree with you, like the stability of the one-hander is very important, because you're hitting it with one hand and quite far out from the body, right? Where the two-hander, you get a bit of extra help from the two hands and you're closer to the body. Yeah. So it's a very different stroke, and it requires a little bit of different specs, I think, to work. And I think when most players played one-handed backhands, it was like the wooden era days. And then it's been progressing. So rackets have changed a huge lot. And now most players, I would say 95% probably play with two hands, at least on the tours, it seems like.
Well, it almost feels like you have to play with two hands now if you want to be competitive. Like, and even the best one-handed, and I'm not saying this to like, you know, say you can't play with a one-hander anymore, but it is tough. Like the highest ceiling of a one-hander now seems to be like 7th or 8th in the world, which Tsitsipas and like Dimitrov are doing. But as soon as it feels like as soon as points get super, super tight, the best two-handers are going to beat the best one-handers, even with like Federer versus Djokovic and stuff like that. So it's a beautiful stroke. I think it might be the most beautiful shot in tennis, which is why I think it should live on. But in a super competitive setting, even Beckett was talking to me about this, and he was like, Simon, his buddy there, Simon, has a really good one-hander. And Beckett was like trying to coach it out of him. He's like, no, if you want to be competitive, like you can't use a one-hander. It's like, okay, sometimes you just got to let the talent like shine through and see what's possible. Cause I mean, it is a beautiful shot and it's quite powerful too. Like you can generate great angles, and I feel like you can attack better with a one-hander than with a two-hander. Although now you're seeing guys like Sinner and Alcaraz and they can attack. Like they're just ridiculous. So I don't know. It is, it's interesting to see the development of that stroke.
Yeah, we will see if we get another world number one. I guess it's possible depending on the talent of the player and if there's someone like a beast, has a beast one-handed backhand. But it seems that if all things are equal, like the one-handed backhand becomes the major liability where people go to, right? That's the thing you see on pretty much all levels of tennis. Oh, this guy has a one-handed backhand. I'm going to hit high topspin to his one-handed backhand. That goes almost all levels. You see that strategy, and it's usually quite successful, I would say. Not always, but usually.
I mean, every player other than like Gasquet and Wawrinka, like Gasquet, and that's because he has a particularly bad forehand, I think, because he still will shank a one-hander like once in a while. But like Wawrinka, I think when in his prime, you didn't want to go to his backhand just because he could like completely hit you off the court, like we saw in that Roland Garros final. But like Fed, Dimitrov, Tsitsipas, I mean, you see it with all these guys. Like as soon as you want to win, if you want the best chance of winning a point against those guys, you play on their backhand. Like even if it's a minor weakness, it's still a weakness. So yeah, it's a bit of a bummer.
Yeah, I agree. It is what it is, but we still like it. So the Head Speed Legend Pro, that's the most recent video you did, right? That's an interesting topic in itself. Like I said something about it in my video yesterday, which was like the This Week in Tennis. I said a little bit disappointed that it didn't go the Rafa route and trying to make it more close to what Novak actually plays. What was your take of that racket and the release strategy of it?
Yeah, I'm disappointed. Like point blank, I'm really disappointed. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Like it feels like, and I was getting a lot of comments from people saying like, we don't even need his swing weight. Like let us customize it if you want. And that's a good point. I hadn't even thought of that because like the RF maybe is a little lower swing weight than what Federer is actually using, but like the Rafa is fully like a Nadal's racket. But yeah, I was just like, I mean, you have the mold, like make the racket, sell. It's gonna like, I think it's gonna do better. You might as well just call this the Blackout Speed like it was. I don't know what it was called like at the U.S. Open, but the like Midnight Speed Pro or whatever. Like what's the point of this? It's not even his own line. Like it was definitely a little disappointing. I think the Speed Pro is a great racket, which is why I think this will maybe translate better to sales. Like the Rafa didn't do too well, I think, or the Origin at least didn't do too well for Babolat. But just give us the chance to play with this. And like you're not gonna get 4 more years of Djokovic, probably not. So just do it now. Like I think it would have been so much fun. But obviously they didn't, and we'll see. I mean, I like the fact that it's glossy. At least there's that. But
I think it's a virtual option.
I don't know if that's
what it is.
Yeah, well, exactly. Cool. So yeah. So it's that's at least something. But no, I was disappointed, especially because I think that's the one of the big 3 that I was most excited to try. Because obviously, like I've had a liquid metal radical in the past, and I think this is close to that. I mean, I've never hit with Djokovic's racket, and I don't know exactly what he's playing with right now, but I know it would feel pretty epic, I think, because the mold that the liquid metal radical was awesome. And yeah, just like static weight high if you want, swing weight, just let us, put it at 340, like do something high if you need, like, I don't, but you don't have to do like the 370 or the 350 or whatever he's playing with, and just let us try it. Like, I think it would have been awesome.
Yeah, I have it at home, right? So I tried, did a few tests with fellow hitters, like on pretty high level. And it's more playable than Marius racket, for example. And I think a lot of players thought it was like, yeah, this is fun racket. Like it's close to 360 swing weight or 360. I don't remember exactly the specs. It's obviously a 95 in 18, 19. But you could even have gone and I have the same response as you, because I thought, okay, they finally do it. Because when I heard about the Legend, I'm like, okay, they're doing it. That's nice, finally, right? I thought at least, okay, if you're not going to go 95 and with his specs, doing the 98, do like a variation of like 98, 18, 19, heavy beast racket. Because even if Rafa's didn't sell, like I really love that racket. I think it's super fun to play with, even for 1 hour. And it's up to me if I want to buy it and play with that. Because then like, okay, this is why Rafa gets so much paid. I mean, obviously his technique, we were not talking about rackets as, if replacing a good technique. But you feel when you hit a good shot with Rafa's racket that this is a beast of a racket, and it helps his style. So that would have been fun also to feel the precision of a Novak racket, because it's a very precision-based racket, right?
Totally. I mean, one of the things I had fun doing when I played with the Origin, and I played with it very briefly because I almost felt like I was going to hurt myself playing with that racket. Like it's just so heavy.
You will.
Don't want to hurt my wrists and stuff. Yeah, but like it was fun, and it was like I was like, okay, I'm going to try like the buggy whip forehand and like do the Rafa stuff, and it felt like it complemented that stroke really well. So trying to like mimic Novak's style, which is a little bit less, I don't know, kind of obvious, but it would have been, I think it would have been super fun. I also think, I know it's crazy. Like this is kind of a whole different topic on like head rackets in general. Head has a lot of rackets. They don't have a constant beam 98 that's like playable, because the Prestige, it's playable for sure. Like this is one of the most playable Prestiges ever, but like they don't have a blade style of racket. I'm not saying Head needs to make another racket, but like if you had made this 98, 18, 19, 22 millimeter or 21 or 22 millimeter beam and like to make it playable and call it the Speed Pro, that would have been kind of weird, because it's not even like really what Djokovic is using. But I think it would have been fun. I don't know. Just making it a Speed Pro was like, okay, cool. Like just make a blackout Speed Pro and call it that.
There's a bit of a cop out. I felt like, because they have enough rackets anyway, right? So adding like a Speed Tour or whatever in 18, 19, 98 or something wouldn't have been like a huge issue in the line, right? Because you expect that they have a lot of lines, but they don't have that many rackets in each line. So this would have been fine, in my opinion. That's just, I understand that from like they've been going through maybe research and they have their reasons, but it just felt for the true nerds and the fans who wanted to try these kind of pro player racket specs. They don't. I think most people understand that they won't play their best tennis with them. I think it's just a fun thing, right?
No, totally. And I wonder if Valot not being successful with the Origin hurt them, but I also like made Head kind of think twice about doing that. But I also think Rafa like not playing hurt those sales, and obviously Novak's definitely still like extremely relevant in major tournaments. So I think they would have been fine with that. But also maybe Djokovic isn't as marketable as Federer and Nadal, so it wouldn't sell itself the way like the RF did. But it is a little bit of a bummer, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. So the obvious question now that we have to get into is, what do you play with right now if you go into a tournament tomorrow?
Yeah, so I've actually been playing competitive doubles with my partner and my hitting partner. And okay, so I know I'm technically using the Boom officially on the YouTube channel. Like that's the racket I'm supposed to be playing with, but I've been playing a lot with the Percept recently, and I do really like that racket. I think part of the reason why I like the Percept so much is I did a big part of my progression as a tennis player with the Dual G, like the old VCore Pro Dual G or whatever it was called. Obviously not like identical rackets, but the closest thing to that. So I think it complements my strokes quite well. So I've actually been thinking of doing a new racket journey video on the channel, and probably going to switch to the Percept. But I don't know. Every time I grab a Boom Pro, it's like I think it's such a good racket. Super stable, powerful, spin friendly. So it'd probably be between those two. I know everybody thinks that I play with the Gravity Pro. I don't. I just really like that racket. I think that's like the best, objectively the most like pro racket and the most fun racket to play with right now. But I still think it's too heavy, and like I probably need a little bit more spin and just like a quicker face and like that. Yeah, I can't play my best. I compare that racket kind of like to the Pro Tour 280, but in an easier package because obviously it's a 100, but like it's the reason I like playing tennis nowadays is because I like getting good feel and like making clean contact and like feeling that like the best possible feedback in my hand. And I think that's what the Gravity Pro gives me. So every time I play with it, I'm super happy. But then like there's also this part of me that wants to be as competitive as possible, and like I just can't do that with the Gravity Pro, unfortunately.
Yeah, makes sense. Which percept, by the way?
The 97, the standard 97, the 310,
Yeah.
1619. Yeah.
That's a great.
Yeah, 330 is just too heavy. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's great though. I like the 330, but it gets quite heavy. I'm actually playing the Boom Pro as in my next tournament now. I'm also customized though. I add about a bit of weight, especially to the handle, but also a bit to the hoop. But it's really super sweet racket. Yeah, I mean, it still has some like consistency issues, but they're so minor. I don't really worry too much. That's my consistency is more of a problem than the racket, I would say. You know.
I totally agree. Like I think the Boom MP has major inconsistency issues, but I don't think they translate like 1-to-1 with the Boom Pro. Like I think the Boom Pro, once you dial it in, once you like realize the launch is going to be a little higher and like things are going to be different to like a more traditionally shaped racket, I don't think the I think in a 98 that design works quite well. Like we see it even with the V-Core. The V-Core is a similar design where it gets a little sprayy sometimes if you're not making like super clean contact, but once you dial it in, like you get awesome spin, power, and stability because the sweet spot is so unique. So I think the Boom Pro is a great racket that a lot of people should try. Like even if you have like a slightly more compact stroke, like you're gonna get so much easy depth and still like good feel and pretty good precision that I think it's great. I think it's a great racket. I just think Head kind of screwed up with the marketing on that racket. Like first of all, this like what was it? It was like "You got this" or whatever was the blacked out hidden message, and it's like I don't care if it's cool, but that's just not cool. That's not gonna help you sell stuff.
No,
but yeah,
I agree with that. I think like one of the things with the Boom I thought was the key message, and I think I talked to Head about this after they released it, but it was like the sound of the rackets, especially the Boom Pro. I love the sound of the racket. Like if you hit a good shot, like it really creates a nice sound. I don't know why, but it's a good sound. And you could use that in marketing. Like the boom is the sonic boom, like the boom of the sound instead of just it being a lame name for power, right? So use the sound, but I don't think that ever was like that could be used in marketing more. Like, yeah, it's all about the sound when you hit like the feedback of the sound. I don't know. I think it's a great racket. I think it's underlooked. It's definitely my favorite 98 in the head lineup, right? So for me, it's been a really good one, you know.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like it's my favorite 98 in the head lineup, which again, I think they're lacking like a traditional 98, but it's a constant beam racket. So the feel is really good. And it's like a 22 millimeter beam. So and it's head, I think head rackets feel quite good, even with Auxetic 2.0, which has changed things a little bit. But yeah, I think it's a really solid racket. I just think Head needs to work on their marketing in general. Like I think it's pretty obvious that Head is my favorite company. Just, I don't know if I should be saying that, but like historically speaking, I've liked their rackets a lot. And like their current rackets are probably my favorite as well. But I think they need to work on some stuff. Even when like the Gravity came out, it was like right after the Clash and people were like comparing it to the Clash. And it was like, I mean, this is a similar-ish concept. At least the Gravity MP is like sort of, but it's not at all the same racket. Like it's got a higher ceiling. I don't want to say it's better, but like all the Gravities have higher ceilings, I think, than the Clashes for like who can play with them and like playability and stuff. And I just, and sales were like Clash was running laps around the Gravity. And I think Head should focus a little bit more on that marketing, but
yeah, because the rackets are very good, like, and they have the heritage. Like they've been around for a long time, and all the classical rackets from Head are pretty legendary. A lot of them, right? Like all the old Radicals and Prestiges, they're great rackets. So it's a shame sometimes that you feel, and the Gravity, like I agree with you, it's such a good transition to make a control racket into a slightly more forgiving frame. And I think the Pro edition could have been offered in a 1619 slightly lighter version. I think this would have been an easy way to be like, hey, the 1820 this for really advanced players. You need to handle 330 swing weight, otherwise no chance. here's a 16, 19, 320 swing weight. Go for that. You get a bit more spin. You get a bit more help. Would have been easy.
I totally agree. And the crazy thing with these head gravities is like, pros obviously aren't switching rackets all the time, and yet like 3 pros have switched to the gravity line just because it's such a good racket. Like a guy went from 6-1 playing with 6-1s to playing with a gravity because like it's that good of a racket, where like the power is good, the spin is good, the control is amazing, the feel is really good. That Australian women's former number 1 who retired, I forget her name right now, but
Ash Barty,
Ash Barty. Like she was playing with what, a 16? She playing with a gravity MP string pattern and a gravity pro. Is that what it was? I don't remember exactly, but like, players like
she has a 16-19 gravity pro, I think.
Is that, a 16-19 gravity pro? Okay, yeah. So like players like this mold, like this racket, lean in on that. Like I think slowly the gravity people have realized how good of a line it is, but it wasn't thanks to their marketing. Like that's not what made their racket, and that's never been Head's like forte. To be fair, they make excellent products, and that's how and that's probably a better, like, it's better to be good at making rackets than marketing rackets for us, but I don't know if it's better for them. And I think they capitalized on all these things. Like it took a year for them to like give Rublev an actual paint job with the gravity. Like capitalize on these things, man. You guys are making great products.
Yeah, and they could maybe use it more. I think for him, he was stuck in a contract with Wilson, right? So that was a little bit the issue, but still, they could have done more with that. I 100% agree. And when we met in Marbella, you really enjoyed the strikes. Have you been using those more? And what do you feel about the strikes from Bubble Up?
So I go through obviously testing gear as much as we do. Like we'll get in our own heads about what we like probably from one day to the next. And like I obviously, like you were saying, I was hitting quite well with that strike that day, and I thought I was too. And there was like another day with Beckett, I was playing with the Sinners, like this, because he made a video about Sinners spec version of the Graphene Touch Speed MP, and I was playing with that, which has a 337 swing weight, I think, with a low static weight, which is kind of a similar like swing weight and balance to the strike. And I was playing really well, and I like that kind of more weight in the head feel, and I can kind of like slap the ball. But anytime I get tight and I need to like spin the ball or like play with margin, I just that super head heavy feel just kind of gets in the way, I think. So as much as I like the strike, I don't think I could ever switch to it right now. I kind of wish they had made the swing weight a little bit lower because it's otherwise such a good racket, but I don't know. It's a little bit tough for me.
Yeah, I agree. The swing weights are really high on strikes, and it's been since the start, I guess. And it's like I feel like weirdly the quality control of the strikes are like worse than on the other bubble out lines for some reason. I don't know what. It's like really all over the place.
It is all over the place with those rackets. Yeah, it's weird. Brands have like random quality control. Like sometimes they'll be excellent, and other times they'll be awful. Like even Yonex, I know there's like, man, when I started my tennis nerd journey, I thought Yonex was like the holy grail of quality control and like quality and stuff. I don't know. Like the VCore, when I tested the VCore 98, my swing weight was like 337 and it was supposed to be 318. I'm like, well, if this is actually, it was bad. It completely changed my like experience to the point where I had to like retest it a week later, and I was like wasting time doing that. And because it's, it's a completely different racket at that swing weight. Fun, but not as usable. So that always annoys me when quality control is that bad.
Yeah, getting into that, I think the one that was surprising to me, I don't know if you had the same experience. I had like now 5 different types of blades, and I measured them on the swing weight machine with the, all the specs and parameters. And the blades now, I mean, Wilson used to be pretty bad at this as well, especially with the pro staffs, and RF97s used to be like whopping differences. But with the new blades, either they focus more on it, or I've just been crazy lucky because I've had like 5 different rackets and they all been pretty much spot on. What's been your experience with the new blades, V9?
I think Wilson is sneaky good with quality control right now. Like they're doing some pretty good stuff. All my blades came in between like 318 and 325, I want to say, or something like that. I know I think we all need to like calibrate our machines too in the review community so that we're at the same, because like I think Beckett swings like 7 points lower than mine on average. And so like we need to figure that out, because he gave me a racket the other day and was like, yeah, this swings it down. And then I tested it on our machine. I'm like, oh my God, this is like different. And that's not good. Yeah, like they were all swinging within 7 points and I tested like 10, and I'm like, this is impressive. Like, I know it doesn't sound great to be 7 points off, but to get swing weight that close I thought was pretty good. And it was mainly all like around 323 too, like with some outliers. Yeah.
Yeah, I really had a good experience with that. I thought this was the best they've been in a long time, and I think it seems to be something they have focused on, right? They'd be like, okay, what can we improve? Because it's very similar to V8, but what makes a difference, and that's the quality control. I think makes a huge difference.
Yeah. I mean, it was part of their marketing, which I thought was that I don't like. Like, don't market quality control, please. Like, that should be a bare minimum. You shouldn't be proud that your racket is on spec. That's like, come on, guys. Like, yeah. But no, I'm glad it is. And I honestly have to say, I think things are getting better more than they're getting worse. Like, obviously, quality control is tough to nail for brands, and they'll never be perfect, I don't think. But things are better than they were like 10 years ago, I want to say. Like, when I had 2 Pro Tier 280s, one was like, they were 20 grams off static. Like, things weren't always better back in the day.
No, I 100% agree. Old rackets I have, when I bought some used like pairs or whatever, they're always really off. Like any brand, it's just like very bad quality control, except Fisher, because they had the zero tolerance. They were focusing on that. That was their marketing. And back then, I think it made sense, because then everyone was so bad that this stuff is just, it's been getting better. I think people need to realize it's actually getting better.
No, it definitely is getting better. And I think that's like I think it's quite easy for people to be like, oh, terrible quality control, whatever. But we do need to give props where it's due when they do a good job, because that's what's going to make them keep wanting to do it. If we're like, good work with this. So yeah, there's some things that like annoy me, some lazy things that annoy me with brands. For example, when they don't change a racket much from one to the next and just call it a new racket. But improving quality control is good. Just don't be too proud of it. Actually, what do you think? No. What do you think about? So, I think nowadays releasing a racket is like obviously when they get their most sales. So brands are kind of trying to like turn over quite quickly. What do you think about that? What's your opinion on how quickly we're getting like new stuff?
No, it's way too often. I don't like it from a sustainability. Like, I mean, I'm not like a crazy environmentalist, but I think this is without reason. Like, they go to every 2 years is too often, right? And there's no chance they're gonna do enough R&D, and the racket is gonna be enough of an improvement. So it just feels like they're rushing it to get that marketing wow. And if they can't do any tweaks to the racket, they're gonna release a cosmetic, and they're gonna charge 300 euros. Like, I mean, the Babolat did with this Pure Drive, I didn't like. We have a 30-year-old anniversary cosmetic, and it's 300 euros. I mean, come on, man. Like, what is the same racket from 4 years ago, and now it's 300 euros in a different cosmetic? I mean, it's lazy. I don't like it. I think they can keep rackets for longer, because people don't switch as often anyways.
No, I agree. I think the frame is something that can last quite a long time for people. So I don't think it's necessary to turn it around. Like, obviously working for a retail store, that's when a brand new racket comes out, like that's when we get our most sales for it. So it is good from a sales point of view, I guess, but it is also a little bit annoying. Like, in the way Head does it is obviously like they'll just update technology and like they'll put the newest tech, like they'll have a big release with the first time that technology is introduced. Although for Auxetic 2.0 it was in the Prestige, so it definitely wasn't a big splashy release. But then they'll just like trickle that in, and it'll be less and less exciting for every version that comes out, and then we're kind of waiting for the next one. But there's no real like design change with any rackets anymore. It's like, okay, I guess that's cool, but maybe if we could do a little more sometimes. Like, I really like what Yonex did with the V-Core. I think Yonex is always like pretty ballsy with their releases, and they do a good job, because their turnaround is, I don't want to say slow. It's not Babolat, but it's probably better than Wilson and Head. Like, Head can give you a new racket in like a year sometimes. I thought that was pretty cool. Like getting the new V core, like obviously it was very different. So people, I guess one of the things that's good for them about just doing minor updates is that people can come from the previous one, switch to this one super easily, and then call it a day. And that's probably a good thing, because sometimes then like we, the consumers, complain about them changing something too much. And we're like, why didn't you keep it the same as it was before? So I guess they can't please everyone, but yeah, it would be better if we saw a little more change or a little less often, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I understand from the sales point of view, because that's with everything. Like the more often it's the same with YouTube or whatever. The more often you can bring out videos, the more people can watch them, and the higher likelihood of like getting views maybe over time. Right? You don't need to have so many high view videos because you have so many videos. So there's this like quantity over quality thing, But yeah. I'm not a huge fan of it. Like that, it's so. I think the 3-year thing is fine, but that it's every other year. I think I'm working for head must be tough, because like, okay, shit, we have to plan now do we have a new radical, then we have a new this, then we new extreme, then we new this, and it just keeps going, and you must be like spinning, right? Well, what's new in the next model, right?
Well, that's the thing, right? Like if they have 5, 6 models right now, and they have to update it every year and a half or 2 years, like that's a new racket every 4 months. Like you just don't have the time to like do it. And their rackets are good, but in a way they are a little lazy, because they are just kind of refreshing and putting this new technology. So at least they're just working on one thing. Like it's this technology, and that's how we're going to apply it to all our rackets. But it is a little like, okay. And I think some, like not all rackets need to be like a copy paste technologically. Like I think you don't necessarily need Auxetic 2.0 and like an extreme or something like that. Like maybe do something a little bit different. I understand the concept in like a prestige and like a gravity, make it stable but soft at the same time. I kind of like the feel that gives and stuff like that, but you don't really need it in all your rackets. So maybe do something different sometimes.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's something that might switch or change a little bit as we move along, right? But it feels a bit too fast, and it's tough to keep up with everything, and it's sometimes tough when two rackets are so similar, Auxetic 1, Auxetic 2, Blade V8, Blade V9, that they're so similar that you have to be pretty good racket reviewer to understand the differences, and to try to convey them can be difficult, right? Because they're so similar. You're like, oh, what am I feeling here? And what am I getting from the ball, with the same string?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still learning new things about Auxetic 2.0, like the difference between that and the original Auxetic. Like when I first did the Prestige, I could barely tell the difference. Like I had them strung the exact same way, everything, and I was like, okay, this feels maybe a little bit more stable and more muted. Like maybe minor, super minor, little changes. I thought it was like a slight improvement in a way. And then I tested like the speed, and now I'm like, okay, this is a lot more muted. Like, but then I don't know, is it the paint? Like it could be the paint, that the super velvety, like rubbery paint that they have on that. And so, yeah, so it's like little tiny tweaks like that are so minor. And I'm not the biggest fan. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about this, because part of what like tennis for me is, like I just said, I'm all about feel. And like when I don't like the feel in a racket, as good as it might be for my game, like I won't switch to it. Like the CX200 right now, I don't like the feel on it. I find it a little bit mushy. What do you, obviously we romanticize like past feeling rackets a little bit, but like playing with something like my Pro 280 or like my Blade, my 2015 Blade, I'm always like, wow, this is incredible. Like the connection I have with the ball, like the fun I have playing tennis with this. What do you think about the feel in rackets nowadays?
Yeah, it's a good topic. I think, bringing out an old racket. I talked to Henrik about this as well. Like it is so much more enjoyable in terms of the sensation in the string bed. The only issue I think sometimes is that they are more difficult to use. So like you do pay a price with the sweet spot being quite small on old school rackets, and you do really feel the difference. Like off center hits, you get like punished. But with the bigger sweet spot comes like a minus in that sometimes you don't really have like a nice sensation. You're like, oh, it's okay, but there's nothing like wow, like you get from the Pro Tours.
So there's sweet spot.
Or yeah, exactly. So I'm in two minds. Like I like the ease of use of some of the new rackets. The Boom Pro I find pretty good in feel. It's not going to be buttery as some rackets, but it's like a nice feeling to it, and it's forgiving. So for me, that's like the best medium I've found of like going very modern, but staying within like a nice feel. But it's not easy to find, right?
Well, it's basically like you've got three options, pick two type of thing, where you can have soft, forgiving, and good feel. You can't have all three. If you want soft and forgiving, you're giving up on feel because it's going to be like these artificially stable rackets like the Clash, to a certain extent, the CX200 I feel that with. Or you can go kind of like I've actually been transitioning towards liking stiffer rackets now because I feel like they don't have that mushy feel that I like. I love soft rackets. I think if I'm gonna pick like the best possible, if I'm to say what I like the feel of most, it's a soft racket with a good feel. But now that we have all this technology kind of getting in the way of feel, I think it's better to go stiff because you don't feel that like undefined, like you don't feel that super long dwell time that's also like really undefined. Like I actually think the Pro Tour 280, like I know it's soft, but it feels kind of crisp to me. Like it's such a like well-defined entry and exit point into the sweet spot. Like it gives you that like kind of thwack feel where it's like boom boom. So which you just don't really have with these like these mushy rackets anymore. Even though they might technically be soft, it's not like soft in a good way, I want to say. Which is why I'm kind of transitioning towards liking stiffer. And like this blade getting a little bit stiffer, I think is kind of cool because like I didn't like the V8 very much. I didn't like the feel. Like I thought it was really mushy and like undefined. And this just feels like it crispened up a little bit, even though it is still like pretty muted, I want to say. Like it's not the best feel ever, but I kind of like that slightly more in and out kind of sensation you get.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's something magical about playing with the Pro Tour, the PT7A. It's like there's something that you can feel like they nailed it, you know? Like even if it is a difficult racket to use, that's the sensation you want from a racket. Some rackets have maybe not all the way there, but they have that similar, like also the Prestige Classic 600 has that kind of, it's not too soft, it's not too firm, it's just like beautifully in between, and you feel the ball 100% every time you hit it. And nowadays, yeah, you're not going to feel the ball in many of these new rackets. Like I do struggle, like I really struggle with the V-Course, despite them being like, you know, I give them high five for changing it up and making like a new mold and everything. It's awesome that they do it. For me, it wasn't like a winner. I thought it was a bit too mushy and like very soft, and I couldn't really find my shots with them, you know, so that was an issue. But
I totally agree.
Really agree.
Like, so this is the thing. Like, I try to kind of disassociate feel with like objective playability sometimes because, like, for me personally, feel is too important to switch to something like the V-Core because I'll always be in the back of my mind thinking, I don't like this. I don't like the feel that this gives me, so I don't like the racket. But objectively, that racket performs extremely well. Like, it's powerful, it's spin friendly, it's pretty controlled, super stable at like a fairly low swing weight. So like, it objectively performs quite well, but I can't get over that feel problem, which is like actually an issue I've been having with Yonex rackets a lot. Like, I think people at this point kind of know my opinion on vibration dampening mesh. I think it's one of the most muted technologies I've felt since like countervail. So when the Percept came out, I was so happy because I thought the old V-Core Pro, and maybe this was partially me trying it with just Polytour Pro, which is obviously a very mushy string as well. But I was like, this racket's way too mushy. Like, they thickened up the beam, they put vibration dampening mesh in it. Like, this is not what I want from my like super controlled racket. Which is why I was so happy with the Percept. Like, I think the Percept feels quite a bit better than the V-Cores and the E-Zones right now because they don't have that technology. And like, I was playing with the Renya or the Regna or whatever it's called, which doesn't have any tech. I'm like, damn, Yonex can actually make some really good feeling rackets if they don't screw around with this dampening tech. But I guess it's super important nowadays. I'm actually I was thinking about this, a little bit disappointed that the V-Core didn't come out after the Percept, or that they didn't put servo filter in the V-Core, because I think the next V-Core will be really good. I think that'll help it quite a bit, because right now it feels like a club. Like, I don't like playing with it. But I think there's huge potential with that racket. I also think the next E-Zone is going to be an awesome racket. Very excited about that.
You got to give it to them because they iterate quite drastically, but they do it with kind of the right mindset. I like it, you know, but yeah, I agree. The VDM was something that ruined, like, because if you go back to the old Dual G or the old V-Cores, they have this really old school, nice graphite feel. and then they completely remove that with the VDM, and you're like, okay, for a control racket line, you don't need this shit, right? Sorry, but it's like
exactly.
you can do it, put it in power, put it in the E zone, try it there, but you don't need it in control rackets because the audience, they don't want this stuff in here, you know. That's not for them, right?
Put it in the E zone, put it in the V core. Like, I can tell you objectively, the V core is a good racket, even though I personally don't like it. Like, it kind of makes sense in that racket, or at least the 98s and the 100s, because otherwise it might be a little bit jarring and like uncomfortable. But don't put it in your control racket. There's just no point in doing that. Like, this is your control racket. Like, give us the best feel. That's such an important part of a control racket, is feel. Whereas I don't think it's as important on your power or spin racket. But don't go and ruin it. And I'm happy they did servo filter. I actually think servo filter is one of the better feeling, like, dampening technologies right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think also, I think the blades feel pretty decent. Like, I played with the Blade 100 today. They feel pretty decent. I feel like there was a time where the dampening was everything was all about dampening. And then they have dampening and low flex. And you're like, well, there's no way I'm going to feel the ball if you have dampening and low flex. Like, that's not going to work for anyone. Yeah. So I also went this way with stiffer rackets. Like, I really been enjoying playing. I mean, like the Boom Pro, it's a stiff, semi-stiff racket. It's not really super stiff, but it gives me power, right? Yeah. And then I really played well with the Aero VS for a while, but that is an interesting one because, like, with the Aero VS, I feel like, okay, the ball is exploding from the racket. You get a lot of spin, a lot of power, but there's no vibration dampening at all. So then you're like, your arm is going to be, my arm started complaining a bit, which it rarely does, you know? So for me, it was a bit like, maybe not for me, this one.
But yeah, it was kind of like my experience with the Pure Drive 98. Like, that's not a very dampened racket. It's quite raw. Even comparing it to the current Aero 98, I was like, wow, this thing is, like, I never have arm problems, and I was starting to get some arm problems with that Pure Drive 98. And I had, the other thing with that one is it's so powerful. I would like strum my stiff poly at like 57 pounds. I'm like, okay, this is where the arm starts hurting, I guess, is we figured it out at that point, because that is, yeah. So, but I do like the feel of like a raw, stiff racket. You just kind of, you need weight in the hoop to deflect from that, the vibrations that are going to go into your arm, and you need to be careful with your string setup as well. But it does feel quite good. Yeah, the blade conundrum. Like, obviously, I love the blade. I don't know if you've seen my blade wall, but I have a blade wall right there where I own every blade that's ever existed. So, like, the end code as well. So I know what good feeling blades feels like. And even this one, like, I think it's better than it has been for the past few. But it's still not like a traditional blade, and that's kind of what I'm waiting for. But I think Wilson's done doing that stuff. I think they got it with their, like, Pro Stock line or whatever, the Blade Pro and all that, and I'll give that to players who want it. But I don't think they're ever gonna, like, make traditional feeling rackets again. They're doing Clash did too well for them. Like, that artificially stable feel clearly didn't deter people from that racket. It's not really deterring people from the blade all that much, and as long as they make it slowly better and better, I think that'll help their rackets out, and that's what they're doing now. So good.
Yeah, I heard rumors that they're bringing out like a new line again. Like, they brought out the Shift, which was it's a racket. I liked it instinctively, and I think it plays pretty well. But I also don't play with it as much as I should if I really like it. So it has like two faces to me, that racket. I don't know if they're bringing out anything new, but what did you think of the Shift? And was this something you enjoyed?
The Shift. When I play tested the Shift, I was like, I'm switching to this thing. It's crazy because, like, to get that amount of spin without sacrificing any precision, I thought was really impressive. But then the more I played with it, the more I was like, okay, it's got this really weird feel when you're hitting flat, where it feels quite like tinny. It's really not meant to be hit flat. Like, you need to get the strings moving and snapping to, like, feel the graphite pocketing the ball the way it should. So the more I played with it, the more, like, that got in my head. And as soon as those feel questions get in my head, I kind of, like, I can't transition to a racket. But I think the Shift is super underrated. I don't know why it's not more popular. I don't know, like, it's not doing too well for us, I think. But it's I think it's a great concept. I think one of the things like brands have been doing a good job recently is making rackets spin friendly without making them, like, wild or unpredictable. Like, that was a huge problem I had, like, when and I talk about this quite a bit where I've been memed, I think, at this point, but spin grommets, like being too big, just made the string kind of move ambiguously within the grommet. And now they're like figuring out ways to, but obviously it moves so much, you could get like ridiculous amounts of spin with spin grommets. And now they've kind of figured out a way to like amplify that spin without without the ambiguity. Like the V-Core is a good example. Like those silicone oil infused grommets, it feels like the strings are moving, but there's no randomness, I guess, to the string movement. The problem, I think, with silicone oil infused grommets is I think they do make the racket more muted, and I think that's part of why it's such a muted racket. But the shift is really cool because it kind of provides a nice sensation when you hit a spin shot where it's like, ooh, I get that like good feel. But then it's so weird on other types of shots that I'm not personally able to switch to it, but I think it's an objectively really good racket. Do you like it?
I do like it. Like, I really liked it. I was also like, okay, maybe this is a racket for me. Like the lighter one, actually, the 1620 version with maybe a little bit of weight. The other one I thought was a bit weird. It's very spinny, but it's 1820, so it doesn't really work for flat shots either. So it's like, I didn't understand the specs there. But the shift,
the other's good.
The
heavy one, the heavy one is crazy. Like, first, when you string it, you see 10 in the throat there, 10 grommets in the throat. So you think it is one of the densest string patterns I've ever seen, and it's so spin friendly. Like, that racket doesn't make sense. I think it could maybe work for some people, not for me. I think you're absolutely right. Like the 1620 with weight is the 1620 at like 310 grams static and like 320 swing weight. I think is perfect. That's spot on with that racket. I think that's what they should have released it as. But it's a fun racket to use for sure. But the 1820 is so weird.
Yeah, I think there's a sales issue. I actually played a guy. I never met him. It was like a tennis blind date. The other day, and he had two shifts. He had one like heavier for days when he feels it, and the one lighter for when he needs more help, which is an interesting approach. But he really loved it. He played it with 4G. He didn't even use an overgrip, which is rare. And he hit a good ball. So that was one way. But I think it's just like people don't see it on the Pro Tour. They don't buy it. They see blades everywhere. They see speeds everywhere. They see radicals and whatnot. But they don't see the shift. And the Zachary thing didn't work out. So I think that's the reason maybe it doesn't sell.
I also think they need to stop with white rackets. Like, I know this is weird. I think we might have discussed this actually when I was in Marbella. I hate white rackets. I hate the way they look swinging. They feel big. Even like in my hand, they feel big. They get in the way. I'm not just saying this because Federer and Djokovic agree with me, by the way, but like, I can't, I don't think they look aesthetically pleasing on the court. Like, one of the reasons why I was never the biggest fan of Team was because he's playing with this white racket and it's like taking away from my viewer experience. It's bizarre. I maybe overdo it in my head a little bit, but I think that kind of hurts sales. And I actually just saw, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about this, but whatever. I just saw the like Roland Garros colorway of it, and it's like black. So I think it's looking pretty good. So I was excited about that. But
no,
what do you think about white rackets? Oh, they are.
I love white rackets.
Yeah. You do like white rackets?
I do. I don't know why though, but I think they look so clean, like nice. But I do agree that it makes the racket feel like it's larger than it is, which is very strange.
Yeah.
And it might actually, I was thinking about this with the Roger Novak thing. Like, it's something when you hit the ball that is a little bit different when the racket is like all white, or it has white in the strike zone. So I can understand the thinking. I do like the looks of it. I think it's weird that Technifiber, who are trying really hard and are going for the market, are only doing white rackets. That I find very strange. Yeah. Like, for example, like that's a pretty gutsy move,
Yeah. I agree that white rackets look really good. Like when you're just looking at them, like on the wall, they look like Technifiber rackets are beautiful when you're stringing them on the wall. They look like so premium and good. And then as soon as I'm swinging it, I'm just like, no, I can't do this. Which is why I think they should do like a revert. Like, obviously it's the French fly. Like, they're trying to kind of go with the French vibe and stuff like that. I think they should do a reverse, like make it the dark blue and then white. Like, they have had that in the past. I think with black rackets, they put the French flag in areas. I think they could totally do it. I wonder if it would help. I mean, yeah, I'd be curious to know what the general population's opinion is on white rackets, because obviously I think you're like, a lot of people will agree with you that it looks clean, and like we always kind of like white and black looking things because it just looks so clean. But Yeah, I wonder if anybody like also thinks that on court, because I think this was like never really discussed before Federer and Djokovic became so picky, but maybe it is affecting it a little bit now. I don't know. I think the Federer
I
thing
think
really
it's
hurt.
Yeah, for sure. I think that hurts the companies quite bad. I think the when the strike was it the strike V2, right? So the Project 17 or whatever it was called. When that came out, that was like the first predominantly white racket in quite a while. I think Technofiber didn't do white rackets then. They weren't bought by Lacoste yet. So that like changed percent. People were like, "Oh, this is different. It's cool. It's back to some white rackets." And now then Technofiber went all in on that, which I think is weird because like you, for example, there are many people like you. I'm pretty sure this is a very polarizing topic. I think half of them or more than half would be like, "Oh, I can't play with the white rack. I don't like it." Because I know other people that don't. And then you are missing out on a huge sales potential because all of them are white. Like at least, maybe do a reverse black racket for Daniil somewhere or whatever. I don't know. It's very strange to me.
Yeah. I wonder if it wouldn't be an interesting idea for brands in like, this is something that the soccer shoe industry does where they're changing. Well, soccer shoes change every year, but like every Grand Slam, maybe give us a new, like, don't have one set color of the frame. Like, the blade doesn't have to be this that's the green blade that's going to follow it through its whole lifespan, and then you're going to release some limited editions. Like, do a new color every 4 months or something. I wonder if that would be kind of cool. Like, you miss out, and then they would go maybe on sale or something. Like, you could sell the older colorway versions or whatever. I think that would be an interesting concept because then people could kind of maybe wait till they get a better color or whatever. I don't think people are too picky in general, but I do think the white rackets do deter people. So Technofiber should absolutely try.
Yeah. No, I think this is a great idea. I think I thought about that too because I think Functional Tennis did it with the Saber. Like they do like a Grand Slam edition. That's very themed to the Grand Slam. But I thought like once a quarter, you have a new blade cosmetic. And I think at least for the first release year. So it's like, okay, we do like the first color is this. And then they do, now we're doing a black one. And they don't have to do all this like midnight edition. They can just, okay, we're doing, this is this season edition. And then they have a few options. Of course, it's more complicated, but they're going to do paint jobs anyway. So why not do that and maybe boost some sales, like for the people who don't like the first cosmetic, for example. I think it's not a bad idea.
I think that's interesting. They should pay us for this idea.
Yes, we need to get paid. They don't pay us enough. These guys, they don't pay anything.
They don't. Oh, that's another topic. Yeah.
Yeah, tennis industry. That's an interesting place to be. If we leave rackets a bit, string testing. You recently published like your top 5 strings, right? So when it comes to strings, what are you looking for, and what do you think people should look more for or consider, like when it comes to you choosing their string?
Yeah. Well, strings is a funny one because it's obviously like 50% or more of the playability. Like, it's such an important part of it, and I haven't discussed it much. I have been on big string journeys myself, so I do kind of know what I'm talking about with strings. I always wanted to complement the qualities. So this is kind of like a thing, like what I think about when I think what is objectively a good racket string is like, did you want it to, like, you have weaknesses in your game. I have weaknesses in my game. We all have weaknesses. Do we want our rackets trying to negate those, or do we want them to complement our strengths? I'm always of the complement your strengths kind of thing. And I think the string should complement the strengths of the racket. Because I don't think you're going to put like a good feeling string in a clash. And that's obviously like, that's instantly going to make it a good feeling racket. I think go all out, make it a mush fest in that racket. That's why Smart was so good in the clash. But like, I think sometimes you can kind of tweak it. So I think putting like a sharp string in a low launching racket is kind of an interesting concept. Like, I really like Lynx Tour and a Gravity Pro. I think I am a little bit disconnected or like out of touch with the really nerdy string world right now, just because like I work for a retail store. We don't bring in strings that like every new hype string on the market. I'm not testing them all the time. So I do think I struggle a little bit, and I don't put any value on like the durability of a string for a couple of reasons. One, I don't break strings. I don't know why. My technique is probably just wrong, but I don't like break strings, but for me, the most important things are feel and then that it complements a frame. So like I'll love RPM rough, which I think is one of the most spin friendly, like snappy strings. I love that in like an Aero 98, but then I don't like it too much in a Gravity Pro, for example. I think it kind of feels weird to have like the Gravity Pro be that much more spin friendly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
What
that
do you, because you, like you obviously, sorry if people hadn't noticed, there's a bit of a delay. Um, like, because you do more string stuff than me, like, and I think brands reach out to you for testing their products and whatnot. What do you like in strings these days?
Yeah, the tricky thing is there's too many brands. Like I say no to so many brands. Like people think I say yes to everything because I do a lot of string reviews. But testing strings is a pain, right? Because partly I have a lot of different rackets to test them in, but there's also a lot of tests like coming in all the time. You know, more rackets, more strings, more shoes, more whatnot. And for one guy, it gets tricky. Now I hope to have some help on Tennis Nerd with other people testing a bit as well alongside me, so I get a bit of like a different perspective, which is I think is a good thing. But with strings, many of them are very similar. Like, so it's extremely tough sometimes to tell like what is really different. And some are very good at making string reviews. I think maybe my string reviews are not as good as they could be, but sometimes I feel like I need dependability on the string 100%. Like that's if I want control from the string. Like if I use a Boom Pro, I want the string that gives some bite and gives me control. If I feel, because the Boom Pro gives me power, right? So I don't need the string to do anything magical except to hold the ball in a bit so the ball dips in. So it's super important to have a right string, but I think the tension and restringing more often, like you said, like, and I'm not a string breaker either, is more important. I think sometimes, like, if you have a stringing machine and you have a good string, like a quality string, there are many quality strings out there, you don't need to overthink your choice of strings. You just buy a reel and then you make sure that you keep up on your restringing so you don't have a string that drops elasticity. People think they can play with a string poly for 3 months. That's not a good way if you play 3 times a week or whatever. So I think that a lot of that is a fresh string and a quality string, and you're good. Like, just dial in the tension based on what you need from the string. And it's not so much as it a bit exaggerated as a science. I think strings sometimes.
I do. I agree with that. I do. Like, I don't want to tear down the string industry, but I think it is a little bit overdone right now, because it's kind of like the pickleball industry right now is going like crazy, like new paddles, new technologies all the time.
Strings.
And that's because there isn't anything. Yeah, there isn't anything established in like the pickleball industry, and the poly world is kind of similar. Where yes, there is like established polys, but this is kind of the area where you can break the establishment. It feels like you're not coming for Wilson or Head or Babolat rackets. Like, you're not, or Yonex, right? You're not gonna topple those. You can try, and the brands are, but that's, they're gonna set the standard, and we're gonna deal with that whether we like it or not. Whereas the string game, I think, because it's a cheaper product, like it's a less expensive product, you can kind of play around with it a little bit more, and people are really interested in that because they want to try it. But I do think it might be slightly overdone. But again, I can't like really say that because, again, I'm not testing everything. Like, I know Restring is doing some good stuff. I've tested some of their products because Beckett obviously plays with them, and I play with some of his rackets sometimes, and I think they're good strings. But I do think it's a little bit overdone in my opinion. I also think like established strings are quite good. Like, as much as Alu power is a different thing because it drops off a cliff after like 7 minutes. Obviously a little exaggerated, but like RPM rough is a really, really good string that's been around for a long time. Hyper G obviously is one of the best shaped strings. Like, it's kind of tough to come for those guys, like to try to take those guys on because they're doing good stuff.
Yeah, I'm the same opinion, right? Like, I do like that there are new approaches to this, and there's some interesting stuff with poly combos, but I don't think you should exaggerate what it does to the string bed. Like, I think it can get really nerdy, and I'm, tennis nerd and all, but I tend to not overcomplicate my own playing, right? So I think I have a few, standard strings that I enjoy, and it's like no shockers. Luxon 4G, it's a great string, one of the best strings. That's its premium price point, but it's also awesome, right? Holds tension, remains playable, for a long time. Hyper G has always been a mainstay for me. Like it's a great string. It's a bit firmer for many, but it's a great string. And the round one I like as well, right? This Hyper G round. It's one of the strings I've been using the most recently. And
I do too, actually.
Yeah, and Lynx Tour from Head, they pretty much copied like Hyper G made a, but that's a great string. Like in a Gravity, it's like beautiful combo, works really well together. I can also put it in the Boop Pro, works well. So, and I'm the same. All the power for me, it drops way too fast. It's a good string, but it's like it's one of the fastest dropping strings from my personal experience. So I don't really go there. That's not how often I want to restring my racket, right? So, but otherwise, like there's good strings. Go.
Sorry. No, I mean, as much as I love Alu Power, it's that's a problem. Like I won't even use it. I think it's objectively, like, when it's good, it's the best, I think. But it's good for so little time that I'm never putting it in rackets. Like when I play test, I need a racket to last me, at least 2-3 hours, not 2-3 minutes. So that's why I can't play with Alu. But I understand why pros like it.
Yeah, I had this discussion with Stefanos as well. He was not a big fan of Auto Power, but like a huge fan of 4G, right? So it's like you can see why, but because even the pros know that it does drop, right? It's a great playability string, but it's on the pro level especially. It's like it's not a long-lasting string. But they did do a good job with how it plays when it's fresh. RPM Blast, another great string, Babula RPM Blast, whether you go rough or non-rough. So these are all established strings that are great. There are new brands. You mentioned Restring. I didn't like the Zero so much, but Sync is very good for round string. I do like the Toraline Wasabi string. That's also a good string. I think that they did something well that was a bit soft, but still very controlled. But then you don't need to go beyond, like, you have your 5-6 ones and then you're good. You don't need to overthink it. It's just you find one and you buy real.
I mean, if testing, if playing with different strings is what gives you joy in tennis, by all means do that. Like, I'm not the voice of reason for stick with something and never play with anything again. No. But I do think it gets overdone a little bit. I actually think Beckett is really good about explaining strings, like much better than me, for sure. And he can do some, like, I've felt some magical stuff that he does with his, like, pocketing by changing tension and stuff like that. I just don't think that's something I'm, like, as interested in, I guess. I just like frames. Like, really, that's my thing. Like, tennis frames are my addiction. I've been down the string rabbit hole, and I might do a little bit more in the future. We'll see, but for now, I think frames is more where I'm at.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think getting a new racket to test is, I would say, like 200% more fun than testing a string. Like I really think that testing a racket is much more fun because there's a lot more to consider and think about and how it plays and like how and then you can have if you test rackets, you anyway need to use a string. You can't use a new string because then it's too many variables. We all know that, right?
Absolutely.
So then you have a string. Okay, I know this. I usually play 50 pounds, whatever. So you're stringing up, and then, okay, in this racket was a bit stiff. Maybe next time I string it, I drop to 47 pounds, or you up it a bit, whatever, if you're playing higher. But I think the racket is more interesting. The string is important, but if it's good and fresh, it's not that important, in my opinion, right? Like, it needs to be good and fresh. That's it, in my opinion.
That's exactly it. Like, right now, my Lynx Tour is getting quite old and notched, and it's feeling bad, but I know, like, as soon as I change that back, it's gonna be perfect.
Yeah. And do you string yourself? You said that, right?
Yeah, I string. Like, I'll go into the store whenever I'm testing a product, take the racket, string it up, and yeah, I do stick to, like, honestly, if it's power/spin rackets, I'll put RPM rough, and if it's control rackets, it's usually Lynx Tour, because I just found that is how I get the best feel for rackets. Sometimes I'll do Alu Power, but I'm kind of over that now because it just gets really annoying after a bit. But yeah, I string. Yeah, I actually really like stringing. Like, stringing was, like, I strung so many rackets during the pandemic, and then I strung at a tournament, and like, that was one of the best times of my life. Honestly, I got pretty quick. Strung a racket in like under 9 minutes once.
What? That's fast. That's pretty fast. I like stringing a few rackets. I don't like stringing like 20 rackets. That's not my cup of tea. I do like stringing a few.
There's a day.
I feel like
it's therapeutic.
Yep, it is. It's kind of like a therapy session, right, in a way. And you can do other stuff. Like, you can watch Rafa play, or you can listen to music, or you do something. And it's where you think about stuff. So it's not like you need to be super focused, because the thing, if you've strung enough rackets, you can do it in your sleep, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. There was a day at the store, every stringer was gone except for me, and we were like super busy. I had to string 35 rackets that day, and that was brutal. But
Yeah.
stringing is a fun activity for sure. And it was great during the pandemic. We were in like a group of like 4 of just me and my closest friends at the front, stringing, selling, and it was a good 2 years. That
Yeah, it sounds pretty cool, actually. One thing I wanted to get to before we close is shoes a little bit. I've been testing a lot of shoes lately, trying to find like a good shoes for the body and for play on clay and hard, because I play on both. We had like, I was really happy with the GP Challenge on clay. It's a shoe I've been using quite a bit. I used it today. Did you test it on clay or hard courts? I guess hard courts in your case, unless you're not playing on clay.
Yeah, I wish we had clay courts. But yeah, I really like the GP Challenge. Actually, I thought it was a big improvement on the Turbo, which I thought was just too soft and like pillowy. I think for some people it could work, just if like you have really bad joints and you're not moving too aggressively. The GP Turbo was fine, but the GP Challenge is good. It's still cushioned. It's quite supportive. It's super comfortable. I don't think it's like a super stability shoe like the Gel Resolution or Court FF or something like that, but it's a good shoe. Yeah, I kind of go between like different vibes with my shoes. Like sometimes I really like a Gel Resolution and like just having a pontoon stuck to my feet for like super stability. And then like right now I'm testing the new Jet Tear, which I actually really like. It's way lighter. Like the Solutions, it's similar to the Solution Speed in weight. And I kind of like that being able to fly around the court sensation that it gives, even if it isn't quite as supportive. I just think with those types of shoes, you got to be a little more kind of precise with your footwork, because they're not going to bail you out if you make a mistake the way like a Court FF would. Like if you roll over in the Court FF, it's just going to keep you straight up. If you roll over in a worn out Solution Speed, you're done. Like that's it.
Yeah, you have to pick your shoes wisely and not change them too much. I think that's important for rec players. Well, when it comes to pickleball rackets, if we get into that, I'm quite curious. Like I've tested a few pickleball rackets. Like now that the industry is booming, and we've seen this in many manufacturing industries, and there's so many pickleball players, right? They try different paddles and they get a different spin, or I mean, there's a lot of different restrictions. I read the regulation on the pickleball paddles and stuff.
Yeah.
How different are the bats you play with? How different are the paddles in terms of play?
To be honest, they're very different.
Yeah.
There's huge differences in pickleball paddles. I would say almost more like it's almost like you took the differences in tennis rackets and then added the variability of strings into like all the products. So it's a wild industry. Like I think it's almost easier for me to review a pickleball paddle because it's more obvious what the differences are. Like I just tested there's like a new paddle from Yola that just came out that's like insanely powerful. It feels like it has the trampoline effect of like strings in them, and that's like completely changed. Like that's revolutionized the industry. Like there have been new periods every 8 months in pickleball where the industry is completely transformed and you can never go back to what it was before. But that's what happens with such a new sport. I mean, it's been around since the 80s, but really since like 2019 is when it started going crazy. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like you get super soft paddles, you get super stiff, powerful paddles, tons of spin, less spin. And it's kind of like, I wonder when it's all going to start focusing down into this is the best performance, and then which brands are going to capitalize on that. Because it's the Wild West right now. Like we're bringing in brands left, right, and center that are kind of pushing the needle. And then it's like waiting for the next thing to come, and that brand becomes completely obsolete once the next industry shift comes. So it's very interesting. I kind of have a problem with the pickleball industry a little bit. I think like it's a little toxic. Opinions are like people like not like influencers' opinions. I'm talking more like everybody that tries a paddle has an opinion, and then like if that disagrees with like you or something, you're like instantly wrong. So it's a weird, yeah, it's weird, but yes, paddles are very different. Like there's, yeah, I think it's cool. I think it's fun. Like there's a huge opportunity for content on social media with it. That's for sure. So we're kind of capitalizing on that.
Yeah, and I've tried a bunch of different pickleball bats, paddles, and it does play very different, and there's a lot of room for growth and exploration.
Yeah.
And I do hear that many pickleball players come in with like a bag with, if they're a bit nerdy like you and me, come in with like 5 different paddles, and you know, okay, I'm gonna play. I like this spin more, and I get a lot of power from this. Because then, if the more drastic the differences are in a sport where I would say like it's obviously less skill based than tennis or tennis. Like if you change the racket in tennis, your game can go down quite a bit. But if you change the paddle in pickleball, I don't know like how much effect it has on your game. Maybe it has, but well, I think it's a small,
I don't know.
Shift.
I don't know if you saw that Twitter thread of that pickleball pro that basically said, pickleball is less skill based. I'm just gonna say that as somebody who does both at a fairly low level. Tennis is a much more difficult sport, so that is out there now. I have shared my opinion on it, but yeah, no, you can transition from a pickleball paddle dude. Tennis is just a completely different beast. Like the contact is much more difficult, involves much more precision, and like you get bailed out by the ball just being light and soft. It's soft now, but light in pickleball. So it's definitely different, but. Man, if you like the tennis industry is nerdy for sure. And it's more like you got the established nerds, like we're all like kind of chasing that classic feel and that kind of stuff. That's kind of what the nerdiness of tennis is. But pickleball is like everyone wants to know the newest and greatest and like all this stuff. Like it's a crazy industry. Like I'll go to the pickleball courts and people like recognize me because of the channel, and I'll get asked like the whole time I'm there, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Oh, what paddle is that? What paddle is this? What's all this stuff? And it's like, yeah, the thing is with me and pickleball is like, I'm not as popular as like the bigger pickleball channels. Like I don't know why. I don't think my style translates as well to pickleball. I think like the big pickleball reviewers are more interested in like actual numbers on RPMs and velocity and like technical performance, and I'm never going to get into that. So I think I'm a little bit under that in terms of like production quality and stuff. So I am a little bit like late in my opinions and whatnot, but still it's and that's why sometimes I get a little bit of hate on the YouTube comment section more than on the tennis one. So yeah, it's an interesting industry for sure. I have a lot of fun with it, but sometimes I find it a little cringe.
Yeah, it seems like a more aggressive audience, which is strange. Like it seems like there's maybe so many new ones, but they're quite aggressive, right? I mean, they're Americans after all. Sorry, Americans, but it's like there's the kind of they like to really be loud about their opinions, and that you don't see so much in tennis yet. Like you get some weird comments, but from what I've seen on pickleball channels is that everyone, like you say, have an opinion, and they need to shout it from the rooftops. And if it's not aligned with you, then you're an idiot, right? It's kind of like how it is.
Yeah. This is a bit of a if I speak, I'm in big trouble moment. But yeah,
you don't need to
go to my comments.
Just blink your eyes like a hostage situation, right? Yeah. So
exactly.
So that's great. So last question for me. Luca, so what's been your experience with YouTube, like in terms of interacting with fans and stuff, like dealing with negative comments? I guess you get mainly positive, and I've also been lucky with that. But how do you feel about the YouTube experience?
So at the beginning, like, and this was I think par for the course. Like when I wasn't established, I don't think I'm super established yet, but I am like more established than I was. People were kind of like. I guess it was easier to kind of criticize my opinion because I didn't have the legitimacy quite yet. But I completely understood that because like sometimes I would say things that are maybe a little bit off from what most people's perception is. And that's totally fine. At first I did struggle a little bit, I think, because maybe I just had this like imposter syndrome where I was like, oh shit, people are gonna think I'm a fraud, or like I don't know what I'm talking about and stuff like that. Now I think honestly on the tennis channel, very few comments are negative. I'll get like once in a while, and then honestly it feels like people back me up before I even have to back myself up. So I think I love my tennis community. I think I should do a better job of like answering comments quickly, because it can get a little bit difficult sometimes, which I'm super appreciative of. Um, but it's been a really nice transition for me, kind of going to being a more established like content creator. And I enjoy it a lot. I think I really like when it's not even some like when it's something like a little quirkier that I did or that I said that people find funny or something like that. Like I love engaging in discussions about gear, but it's just kind of like building the community that I find really fun. So yeah, I love it. I think it is a little bit tough. I'm not gonna lie, on the pickleball channel, because I have had so much more success on the tennis one that sometimes I'm just like why am I doing this? Like it's just a little frustrating. But I completely understand it. Like it's the internet at the end of the day. Like there will be negative comments and people will have their opinions, and you just kind of, the good thing is I have a great community at work that kind of backs me up on anything. So sometimes I've been wanting to get a little like responsive and like trolly and like sarcastic and stuff like that. But you know, representing a store, I can't, like a retail store, I can't really do that. But yeah. What about you?
Yeah, some days I feel like I'm gonna go in and reply aggressively to some people that I disagree with, and then I change my mind. You know, usually I'm like, okay, there's not worth wasting energy on this. And some positions they're right. Like, okay, this review, like this was not well done. Like, okay, fair enough. You know, it wasn't the finest hour. But sometimes it's too stupid to reply to, and sometimes you just want to go and reply to it. But yeah, I try to reply to it as much as I can, but it's people have to realize it's very tough. And the same when I get so many messages on Instagram with questions about gear and emails and stuff. So it's as a one guy, you know, it's tough to keep up. And then we're all trying our best to be this one man show that, yeah, really like the racket tennis industry is not like a El Dorado full of money where we just like, oh, reviews are gonna make me hugely rich. No, so it's about passion and community. But it also has to be like an understanding of that this is a human being and one person generally.
Yeah, that's another thing is that like the first year I did this, and now it's probably been around a year and like 5 months or 4 months or whatever. First year I did this, I was so obsessed with like analytics and like trying to like, I always felt like I was gonna slip off if I wasn't dialed in like 24/7. And I think I was still a little bit this when we met in Marbella, but like I recently realized like, okay, you gotta like just let it be. You'll be fine. Like the internet will still be there. But yeah, so basically I just realized it will all be okay. Like I have to unwind from this a little bit. That's another thing. The Instagram comments, I can't respond to every DM that I get on Instagram just because it's a little bit like too much. And when I'm in my free time, I need to be able to have my free time and not be thinking about all this stuff. So yeah, at first it was tough. I'm not gonna lie. Like it's the internet. The internet is a crazy place that never stops. Yeah.
I think everyone goes through that in the beginning, that it's like as the stats. I mean, they've gamified it enough, YouTube, and there's smart people behind it, right? That you want to go and check stats, and it becomes like a game for you if your video can do better, or if you can get more likes or views or stuff like that. But really in its essence, like especially since if you're making money from the YouTube channel, it's not going to be huge difference month on month. Maybe huge channels who go viral, maybe a big difference, but for me personally it's been very small changes. So getting too obsessive with numbers is not really my personality, and it doesn't really feel so good to be that either. And logging into YouTube Studio is not always the healthiest way to use your time, right?
Yeah, I didn't even realize that there was an app for YouTube Studio until like 6 months in, and I have to say that didn't help because having it on my phone. Yeah. But yeah, no, I just think, I mean, it's obviously a competitive industry. Like you're fighting for people's attention. It's one of the hardest things to do, right? Which is why I think it's really tough to make it in this. And I think somewhat unfortunately we have basically made it in an industry that has a ceiling, but you know,
this is our passion and that's what we love. So that I'm very happy with it. That's for sure.
I think that's a great note to end on. It's a passion. We share it. We both love it. And
Yeah.
I think many of our viewers, listeners, subscribers are the same people, right? So I think I see the same people in the comments of Beckett's, my videos. Generally, like they watch, I think, many different videos in one racket. Like, and I think that's a good idea because you get different opinions, different styles. So I think that's great. So it's a community we all share, kind of.
Oh, exactly. It's a very fun community to be a part of. I think and maybe this is thanks to us in part as well. I mean, I think you were a big pioneer for making this community what it is. Like, you kind of brought forums to entertainment, like to the entertainment part of YouTube. And so that was a big thing for me. And I think, yeah, me and Beckett are kind of, younger or like newer in this sphere and following in your footsteps in a way that I think is fun in different ways, because we all have different styles. You can't just copy what came before, and there you go. But
yeah, it's great. It's great. Fun little community to be a part of. Thanks, Luca, for your time. Different time zones for us. I'm gonna go and eat a late dinner. And you're gonna play some tennis today, or what's your plan?
I already played. My knee is hurting a little bit, so I've got to finish up this Jet Terror review and then maybe pickleball later. We'll see.
Oh yeah.
It's a big month in the pickleball industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many things coming out, man. I don't. It's just paddles being released. Every month is big. I never sleep with pickleball.
That's great. All right, man. Well, we'll talk more pickleball next time. I think people will maybe unsubscribe if I keep talking about pickleball. But I'm also quite curious about the different industry. You learn something from it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you have a nice day, man.
Yeah, you too. See you, Jonas. Thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure.